In this section, we want to review some basic algebra concepts, beginning with some basic terminology that we'll call back on throughout a variety of problems this semester. We can start off by talking about a numerical expression. A numerical expression is just a list of numbers being added, subtracted, multiplied, or divided. For instance, something like 2 plus 3 minus 5 would be a numerical expression. And then we can define each of those numbers, every number that's being added or subtracted from another one, as an individual term. So this expression, 2 plus 3 minus 5, has a total of 3 terms. From there, we can move on to talking about algebraic expressions. The difference between a numerical and an algebraic expression is that now we begin introducing letters or variables into those expressions. In this case, we have 2x plus 3. Since we have two pieces being added together, that tells us that we have two separate terms. First, we have the variable term, which is identified by being the term that has some letter, some variable contained within it. And then any term that doesn't have a variable is referred to as a constant term. When we look at that variable term, we see that we have the product of two values. We have 2 times x. We refer to each of those as factors in that term. So our variable term has two factors, 2 and x, which are being multiplied together. And we can refer specifically to the 2 that's in front of that x as the coefficient for that variable term. So a variable term may have one or more factors, depending on what's being multiplied together. And we always have a coefficient in front of that variable. In a simpler case, if we just had x by itself, we want to keep in mind that even though we don't write it, we can always think of there being a 1 multiplied by that x. So even an x by itself still has a coefficient of 1. We can also identify the expression 2x plus 3 as a linear expression. We know that it's a linear expression because x isn't being raised to a power or square rooted. So to provide some counter examples or some examples of nonlinear expressions, those would be cases where we have a term with x squared, the square root of x, 1 over x, or anything that makes that variable a little bit more complicated than just the variable by itself, multiplied by some coefficient. The last term that we'll take a look at is an algebraic equation. An algebraic equation isn't too much different from an algebraic expression except for one key piece. If we had something like 2x plus 3 represented again, then we would have an equal sign and some value on the other side. So we just want to keep in mind that distinction. An expression has no equal sign, and then an equation has that equal sign in between the values on the left and right hand side of the equation.